Hello and welcome to another edition of James and Chris Science Videos, where today we're going to be looking at variation in species, or more specifically, variation in humans, where I'm going to set you a task to do, and it should be a bit of fun as we start to look at some of the differences that we've got amongst ourselves. So, what does variation mean? Well, variation is the differences seen between different examples of a species. We've got an almost perfect human specimen, good looking, muscular, and we've got Chris Hemsworth as well. And you can see the differences between us, but you can also see the similarities. And the similarities are what's going to make a species a species. And we're going to talk about that in a separate video when we look at variation amongst animals and variation amongst plants. But today we're looking at the variation, the differences. So if we're going to do this, we're going to start by looking at ourselves, and we're going to find out where those differences come from. And we're going to look at ways that we look at that data and see how we can study variations across species. So what I'm going to ask you to do, coming up is a table. And what I'd like you to do with this table is probably pause the video in a second, and I'd like you to write this table down on a piece of paper. The activities themselves might not make sense to you yet. As soon as you've done the table, start the video again, and what you'll see is I'm going to talk you through what each of the different questions mean. So pause the video now, write the table, come back, and then we'll discuss what each bit means. So welcome back. Hopefully you've paused that. Hopefully you've got your table in front of you. So this is what I want you to do. Each of these questions I'd like you to estimate. I don't want it to be precise. I want it estimated. So start off with height. You can do whatever way you want to measure your height. You can do it in feet, you can do it in centimetres. I don't mind. The idea is just that you have a result that says what you think your height is. Your natural hair colour, it's important you have your natural hair colour. Some of you will no doubt dye your hair, as I probably need to at this stage of my life. But what colour is the hair underneath it is going to give you a different type of variation to if you do the actual colour that your hair is at the moment. Colour of your eyes should be easy. Ask someone else if you don't know. Can you view your fingers? So for this one, here's a picture of me viewing my fingers. This is splitting the fingers, and be able to do it open and close and open and close. On both hands would be good. Can you do that? It's a yes or no question. Earlobes, two types. Genetically, there's something called an attached earlobe, which you can see the first picture. The earlobe finishes direct to the skin. Whereas the free earlobe, you've got like a buttony bit at the bottom of the ear that loops round and then back in. So you can decide whether you've got free or attached earlobes. Look in a mirror, very easy to find out. So then we go to intelligence. Now, for this is not precise. This is just a kind of way of estimating where you think you are. And there's no judgment on this. I'm never going to collect and look at these. This is just a case of where you think you are. So if every single science lesson you find impossible and you think, oh, I can't do it, then you're within 60 and 80 as an estimated number on this system. If you find science a little bit hard, but you work on it, you understand most of it, you're between 80 and 100. If you generally find science quite easy, but you do need to work a little bit, you're between 100 and 120. And if you think science is just way too easy, you're 120, 140. It's just an estimation. It means nothing. It's what we do with the numbers that's going to be important. Sporting is similar. I've put the epitome of sporting brilliance in my head, which is Lionel Messi. But we've got here, all sport is hard. If you just, every time you try a sport, you fall over and you miss the ball and everything else, you're between 60 and 80. If you enjoy sport, but you know, you're never quite in that top team, but you just enjoy it, you're between 80 and 100. If you're good at all sports, you know, you're a member of most teams, you're between 100 and 120. And if you're like that sporting star, then you're between 120 and 140. If you're at 140, you're playing national standard. You're representing your country in something. So freckles is a yes-no question. Do you have freckles? Yes or no? Freckles are a melanin content. They're a dark pigment that your cells make that helps you protect you from the sun, the UV rays from the sun. Some of you have got them, some of you don't. So once you've completed that table, you will have completed the first two columns. Well, the first column is done for you. It's the activities. The second column is your result. So what we now need to do is to look at the types of variation. Now, for this, you're going to have to decide on each of these which type of variation it is. And there are three types, well, two types, and then a combination of the two. The first type is inherited. An inherited variation is one that you have gained from your parents. They've passed it on to you via their genes. Now, if you remember, genes are part of the DNA inside the nucleus of a cell. When you were formed, that nucleus from the sperm met the nucleus of the egg and combined, and in that contained the information that has made you you. The example I've put in, and this will be easy for you to fit on the table, is eye colour. You have gained your eye colour from your parents. You will also be able to pass that on to your children. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean if you're blue-eyed that your children will be blue-eyed, because the genes from your partner is also going to affect the outcome of your children. But it's something that's possible to pass on. So the second type is environmental. These are variations, changes in you that has happened since you were born. So a great example of this is a scar. If you have a scar, you definitely weren't born with that. You definitely didn't inherit the scar from your parents, and you definitely can't pass on your scar to your children. So a scar would be an environmental variation. The last which, now this is a bit contentious in science because we go into the whole nature-nurture debate, but this is where some variations are caused by a combination of two. If I use the sports one as an analogy for this, where you've put your sport will depend on two things. Some of you will be born with the ability to do sport. We call that talent. Some of you will have talent. But if you don't have any training in that sport, then it's very unlikely that you will be up near 140. You need a combination of two. Now, the training is the environmental impact. That's someone influencing you that can be then used as your variation. Now, there's a whole load of debate on this, of whether things like intelligence, is that something you're born with, or is that something you can change and gain? And I'm not going to go down any line of deciding which way you should think. What I will say is that there is some kind of potential. If we look at height, you may have the ability to grow a certain height, but if you don't eat the right food, you won't reach that. Now, I personally call that genetic potential. You are genetically potential, so you have the genetic potential to reach a certain height, but unless you fulfill all the environmental criteria, then you won't reach that height. So you need to fill out that column, and you need to decide for each of them whether you think it's inherited, environmental, or both. And there isn't for some of them necessarily a right answer. Then we come to the final column, and for the final column there are two types of data that you can put. It's called continuous and discontinuous. Now, I'm not going to go on for a long period of time on this video because I've done a separate video a while ago about the different data contents. So if you don't know the difference between continuous and discontinuous, there's a link in the description. I'll put it in the description there because I haven't got the skills to put it onto the slide. But if you want to look at that video, then you can see in depth the difference between continuous and discontinuous. And you've got to decide for each of those variations whether you think it's a discontinuous or a continuous type of data. So let's wrap this up. Humans are wonderfully diverse. We have so many different variations between hair colour, height, skin colour, eyes, sizes of all kinds of things. And it's those variations that make us fascinating. The fact that we are all different. But it's the similarities that will make us a species. And so we have to look at both the similarities and the differences in order to look at a population of a species. The variations can come from two sources. They can be environmental or inherited or both. And you need to be able to recognise different data sources. Thank you very much for listening. Hope to see you all soon. Bye-bye.